Morning, good afternoon everyone. Everyone have a nice lunch? Has everyone learned something good today so far? Is it all a bit confusing what to do with big data? What do we think? Or are you all confident you know what you're doing with big data? No, I think it's pretty challenging. Even defining the term is getting harder, and as it gets a more and more famous, sort of more overused term, it becomes harder and harder to define. Well, anyway, hello everyone. My name's Andy Cotgreave. I'm a senior product consultant at Tableau. I'm very grateful for you all choosing to come and see this presentation. Hopefully we'll all learn something out of this session, which we've entitled How to Integrate and Visualize Big Data. And so I'm going to show Tableau sort of in the second half of this session and just talk about the ways in which we think you can all get benefits from visualizing and exploring big data in a visual way. You know, seeing the data to help yourselves understand it is kind of the key and the secret. What I'm going to go through is I'm going to give you 6 tips that for us really emphasize how to get the most out of big data, and then we'll go into a demo. All right. Feel free to ask me questions throughout the presentation. You know, I can obviously do Q&A at the end. This session tends to take about 35 minutes to get through, so if you want to ask questions, just fire them at me, and I'll either answer them straight away, or I might park them at the end. We'll sort of see on the complexity of the question. So I'll try and get through the slides pretty quickly, because you've probably seen quite a lot of slides today. So there are 6 tips. First of all, simplify. This slide is from a consultancy called the 451 Group. I don't know if anyone's heard of the 451 Group. No? Anyway, this slide is deliberately meant to be complicated and hard to read, right? So it's not because I can't design slides. Each one of these represents a current up-and-coming or established database technology. And the point of this slide is that the database technology is overwhelming right now. You know, the guys this morning have been talking about this, and I was reading about Oracle, how Oracle's under threat at the moment because Oracle has kind of been incumbent, but there's all these new kids on the block just taking over, and everyone's got different databases to do different roles. So right now there's a huge amount of flux and change in the data landscape. And in terms of visualizing this stuff, how do you simplify access to visualizing the data? Well, one thing you can do is find a tool, and we are not the only tool that does this, but any tool that connects whatever database technology you end up going with, you need tools that will connect to many, many of those tools. Tableau, for example, connects to over 35 different databases. On the left, Hadoop, various flavors of Hadoop. We've got data stacks as well in there, but also massive scalable commercial databases, Vectorwise, Teradata, Greenplum, etc. You know, and we are always striving to make that collection of data connections grow and grow and grow. So as this complex landscape evolves, you need to sort of have a nice simple tool on top of it, which can do the visualization layer, because you don't want flux in every single part of the process. Now, an example of that, eBay is one of our big customers. I mean, eBay is probably a customer of every single BI tool going. They've got 52 petabytes of data, which is massive. So in their Hadoop cluster, that's 42 petabytes. That's kind of the advanced analytics team is working there. That's kind of the team of data scientists that Andrew Clegg was talking about this morning. Whereas for everybody else, you know, the data scientists have questions, right? But everybody else, whether they're a sales guy trying to work out if he's on quota, if it's an HR person looking to find out where they're going to get their next hire from, or marketing, how are the lead gens, everybody else has questions to ask of the data, right? And if you just protect that data and give access only to a team of data scientists, then you're sort of disabling the potential discoveries that everybody in your company can discover. So what eBay do is they've got a 10 petabyte Teradata warehouse, which essentially is one enormous table. And what they do is they point Tableau at it, and anybody in the organization can query stuff about what's going on in the website, what auction metrics are happening. So that was tip 1, simplify. But we can't just simplify, we have to coexist. And organizations, some of these data providers are very helpful about this. So Cloudera and Teradata, you know, this is, you don't need to read this, but what this is, a document they've created saying, look, certain things you need to do we're great at, but certain aspects of what you want to do with your data we're not so great at. So for example, what they put together was, if you're Cloudera and Teradata, what would you use each of those technologies to do? And coexisting is really important because as this landscape changes, you're going to be picking and choosing technologies possibly quickly until you narrow down and fix on just a few. What that means is that you will have many databases, data all over the place. You'll have ad hoc database connections like Excel or CSV files, and you need to be able to blend them all together into one view in order to gain insight, because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. This is an example where I blended Hadoop data with Teradata data to create one scatter plot to see some relationships in the data. You'll have to excuse me today. I'm feeling dreadful, so if my voice completely packs up, I'll just demo silently. I'll do it all by mime. Visualise. This is the key thing for me. I was a customer of Tableau for 4 years prior to this at the University of Oxford doing just data analysis, and Tableau unlocked things in the data sets we had that just we couldn't ever have dreamt of doing. Now I'm going to do 2 slides which is going to teach you cognitive science. Now you can go and do full university degrees about cognitive science and visual analysis, but I'm going to show 2 slides to show you the theory. So if I ask you a question on this, how many 9s are there on that table? Is that a hard question to answer? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to make one visual change which will make that question really easy. How many 9s are on that table? Is that question now easier to answer? So that's clearly a kind of silly example, but accountants do this. They turn non-profitable stuff red, right? And they do that for a reason, because when you encode data visually, it plays to our strengths. We evolved our visual system over billions and millions of years, and it turns out all that evolution played into the hands of data analysts, because we can visually see things that we had originally evolved for survival and to find the good berries and the bad berries. But using colour in this case, or length or size or area, is a way of encoding data and seeing things in your data that previously would have been hidden. And the guy from Pentaho talked about this slightly this morning as well, is that what we at Tableau call the cycle of visual analysis is vital to get into your business. Because if you are only visualising your data at the end of a project, then you've missed a whole world of opportunities. Because if you can visually explore your data as soon as you've got it, or as soon as you're trying to find structure or take decisions, then you will find problems in the data, find new stories in the data, new questions will be generated. And when you integrate visualization into every aspect of the project or your data, then you'll get hopefully some really good new insights very quickly. Number 4 is empower. And here I actually disagree with something Andrew Clegg said this morning, Andrew Clegg from Pearson. So we sponsored a report for the Economist Intelligence Unit to say, well, how do you foster a data-driven culture? And what we found in that kind of echoed what our sentiment is, that the more you enable everybody to have access to data and be able to answer questions of that data, the more financial reward you will have. Now, so for this question, what strategies proved successful? Right, the biggest success is top-down guidance and mandates from executives. That's people like you trying to drive forward a big data or any kind of data project or culture. If it comes from you, then that'll permeate through your company, and lots of people will be able to answer questions. And Facebook is another one of our big customers, and I'll tell you the sort of the anecdote we know from them, and explain why I think it's different to the way Andrew Clegg sees the world. So Facebook bought Tableau for various projects, and they're very successful with that. But when they came and presented at our customer conference, they started presenting and talking about things that they had no idea were going to happen. So, for example, they had really inefficient meeting room usage, right? And this was kind of causing lost time and lost productivity. So somebody managed to get a whole bunch of data from the Exchange servers, mash it up with some other data they had, and they changed the way they used the booked meeting rooms. Right now, as a result of that, they saved, a bunch of money, not billions of dollars, but a significant amount of money. And imagine if you have a tool and you free up the data, and then anybody in your organization can be free and empowered to answer small questions, right? If you have 100 people who can ask any questions, or your whole organization, 1,000 people, and they each ask questions and save $10,000 or £10,000 a year, you're making massive, massive changes to your bottom line, and you're empowering those end users. If you keep all that data just in the hands of data scientists, then those data scientists are only going to be able to answer questions at the rate they can explore the data themselves. And they're not as close to the data questions itself. The guy trying to work out how to use meeting rooms has a real problem. The data scientist is divorced from that. So for us, it's really important to get the data in the hands of everybody, because you need to trust them to kind of be able to come up with valid metrics of the data. They care about the company. They care about getting the right numbers out of the database. But until you free these things up, you don't see the kind of incremental results that people at Facebook are seeing. Number 5 is integrate. Again, we'll go back to that slide. Data comes from everywhere. We've got to try and simplify things, but blending data all into one place is a really powerful capability. And nobody here would really predict that they'd be able to get all our database in one data warehouse, even within 5-10 years. And we've been trying to do that for 20 years in this industry, right? And we've still got data all over the place, because there will always be text files and Excel files that exist somewhere in your database. So you need to bring them together, and we'll have a look at that in the demo. And a good example of that was Obama. Their election campaign last year was extremely data-driven. And they came up with this amazing, they just had an amazing team that created a bunch of different systems. They had loads of data, but they managed to mash it all together. And they were way more efficient than Romney's IT setup. Romney spent a lot more money on IT, but these guys kind of took this empowering, integration, complexity approach, simplify approach. Well, to win the election, maybe it's a bit far to claim that the data won the election, but who knows. And the final one is evangelize. You're here today, but you're all representing organizations of many people, each of whom have, like the guy at Facebook, they've got data-related problems. This is it's the big data problem that Andrew Clegg said this morning. And once it's up to everybody really to try and push this culture change through the organization. You should never be protective about the tools you have or the databases you have. Get results and push those out through the business. And I think it's, all this technology means nothing if the benefit is not pushed through to everybody in the organization. I think I did do 6. Maybe I said more. But that's 6 tips. And what I want to do now is move to a demo of Tableau, and hopefully you'll see some of these things happen and how I explain how we go through the demo. Just who has seen Tableau before, or before today? I mean, maybe some of you have been to our stand. So you're all brand new to Tableau. You've seen Tableau before, but everyone else is brand new to Tableau. Yeah, it's great. I'm going to have to sit down for this, so I'll disappear for a bit. Right. So what I want to do is talk through a hypothetical case study where I'm going to use Google Analytics data. Okay. This may be the kind of data you're using. It may not be. This is Tableau Desktop. I've kind of got, so these are all the workbooks I've been working on recently. I've been working on some crazy artwork-based stuff, which is not very business relevant. But I've got a bunch of saved data connections here on the left. And the first thing we do is connect to some data. Now, if my internet connection is going to work. I'm going to pull down some Google Analytics data. But what we can see on the left-hand side here is all the data connections that we can make in Tableau. And I'm going to show Google Analytics, but the procedure is essentially the same, whatever we're using, whether it's Hadoop, DataStax, OData, Teradata, Vertica. You know, each one of those is kind of a fully tiered data type. So fingers crossed the internet's going to work. That's a good sign. And can I type my password right first time? Let's see. I can. Is anybody here using Google Analytics data? A couple of people. All right. So I'm going to download live Tableau software.com dimensions. And what I can select from Google Analytics is any of their GA fields and measures. So I've got date. I'm going to add in country. And I'm going to use some of the predefined measure groups, the page usage. I don't think I need bounces or goal completions or revenue. Okay, so I'm now going to click OK and let Tableau and Google talk to each other. So what's happening here is Tableau is going to the cloud. In this case, it happens to be Google Analytics, and it's pulling down data. And I've now got data from Tableau's Google Analytics site. I'll just quickly show you what's going on. So I've got 700,000 visits. Let's look at this by day over the last 5 weeks. Right, so what's happened here? Tableau created this data extract, it went to the cloud, and it pulled down data. It's pulled down these dimensions and measures, and I just dragged and dropped, and I can see the hits per day on tablowsoftware.com. So I've got data from Google Analytics and looked at some data in, it took, 20 seconds. This is Google Analytics, but whatever that data is, wherever it is, you would have something equivalent when you connect to it. Now, things like Hadoop, if you're trying to run a query on Hadoop when it's a massive cluster, then obviously the processing can take a long time. So we have options. You can pull extracts down and create snapshots which will live locally and then work on that to get the instant response that we just saw. So far so good. Visits over time. I can see this on the Google Analytics site, right? That's nothing particularly new. But certain things I can't do with on the Google Analytics site is, for example, do forecasting. So I'm just going to 2 clicks and show forecast. And now I've got new data. Tableau has generated new data. So the blue highlighted there is the actual visits to tablowsoftware.com. And the lighter blue, which is highlighted on the right, that's now what Tableau is forecasting will happen based on the seasonality and the data. Now, it happens that our visitor and hit counts for Google Analytics is pretty predictable, so that prediction isn't very mind-blowing, right? But obviously, if you have slightly more volatile data, you will be able to see the trends in a bit more, or see more interesting trends. But this is predictive analytics, just available without me having used. The only time I've so far used the keyboard is to type my password in. And we can tweak these. We can put in trend lines and moving averages and all of that kind of stuff, which we can look at if you want. I will come back to the time series in a moment. Another way we can explore the data, and the key thing about visual analysis and the cycle of visual analysis is to be able to see the data in different ways very, very quickly, because every time you draw a view, it might answer you a different question. So I've selected dimensions, and we've got this patented bit of technology called Show Me, which is essentially a recommendation engine. So I can choose a filled map because I've got country selected. Now I've got a map drawn. And if I now click Visits, I want to see my visits per every country. I can click the map again. Now I've got a filled map for all my visits. Now, Tableau is an American company growing globally, but we are still dominated by visits from the US. If I turn this to a dot map, I can tweak things like the size and start seeing slightly different trend. So I can begin, let's just get rid of that and that. I can begin to see the dominant, you know, Europe's kind of second behind the US. So this is cool. Now, Google Analytics, again, this is something I could do in Google Analytics. So how can exploration of the data help me cope and add new things to this cloud-based data source? Well, Google Analytics doesn't contain market segmenting or continental groups. Maybe this year I'm going to be targeting the BRIC countries, so I can select Brazil, well, Russia, India, China, and Brazil, if I can hit it. Oh, let's get rid of that one. Sorry, it's slightly harder without the mouse. Well, we'll just put that one in the thing. And then I can group these things together. So keep your eye on the left-hand side of the pane and the color legend as well. So I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to rename this BRICS. So if you can see down at the bottom, let me just zoom in. At the bottom, I've now added this color legend based on what I selected visually, just by visually having a look at things. I've got a new dimension up here in the left. So I've now created data that didn't exist in Google Analytics, or didn't exist in my Hadoop cluster, or didn't exist in my wherever your data is. So I'll rename that group region. You know, I could select some more, so I could say, okay, let's take North America, I'll add that as well. So just group now, orange represents North America. So this is where things are going. So I've created this group. I mean, I could be creating these based on the biggest countries or the smallest countries. In this case, it's by geography. But this new region field, I can now do further analysis with. So I'm going to bring this down onto the label shelf. Actually, I'll put it on the color shelf. In fact, then let's make this a stacked area. And now, what I've done here, I've gone back to my my time series. So we've added some forecast stuff. And now I've added the new dimension that I've just created. So I'm visually creating new dimensions and groups. And now I'm enhancing the kind of stuff Tableau, Google could give me anyway, with new data. So we can see North America dominates. Let's put that at the bottom of the thing. And then the BRIC countries, well, there's not a great deal of visits from the BRIC countries. Maybe we could look at this row by row, or column by column. You know, and I don't like that view, so I'll just undo and undo. All right. So what I hope you're seeing at the moment is that I've looked at data over time. It's taken me no time to get this data from the cloud. I'm looking on a geographical distribution of where things are happening. I'm creating new dimensions, and then I'm using those new dimensions to enhance analysis elsewhere. So let's have a look at another way of looking at country and visits. So let's go back to show me. We could say do a tree map. Well, we could do a bar chart or a tree map, any kind of thing we want to do. So this tree map is showing me visits and country. And as I can see, United States dominates the total amount of visits to tablowsoftware.com. I assume those at the back can't see the label because it's tiny. So if I just, so we can change the label, I'll make that a bit bigger for everybody. Okay, maybe that's a bit better. So we can dynamically change these labels. As part of the analytical process, this is good. I can see United States has lots of visits, all right? But United States also has lots of people. India, I can see, is pretty big in terms of the number of visits, but I know India has, what, over 1 billion people? So as a marketing person, maybe I'm trying to think about, well, what's my penetration in terms in each territory? What's my visits per population? Well, that's data that doesn't exist in Google Analytics, and this is the real-life situation where you're like, okay, this database has this great data in it, but it's incomplete. So what I'm going to do is answer that sort of penetration question by connecting to a different data set. This is Excel, and this is how we connect to an Excel file. I find my Excel file. I choose the worksheet. In this case, there's only one worksheet. We could link multiple ones together or do custom SQL. And I'm going to connect live to it. So now I've got two data connections, all right? population is available to me. Tableau is picked up. If you just look here, you can see this orange link here. So Tableau, it happens that in these two data connections, country region exists in both data sets. So it automatically has said, I can link or blend on those two fields. If the name's different, then you can customize that, obviously. But so long as there's data that's common, we can do this blending that I'm about to show you. So I'm going to drop population on color shelf. So what's happening here is that this tree map is being sized by the Google Analytics visits count, and it's being colored by the Excel population calculation. So this is data from multiple data sources on one view without me having to write any code or any script or even fill out any wizards or anything in this case. And now I can begin to see, well, India looks like there's a big population there, so maybe my penetration's not so good. And what's this one? China, similar kind of thing, lots of visits, but 1.3 billion people, that's quite a lot, right? That's still not quite a great end result in terms of analytics. So I've got visits and I've got population. I'm going to create a calculation which gives me visits per million from these two data sources. So I'm going to enhance the data model, and we'll call this visits per million. Sorry, and for this bit, I do need to use my keyboard. So I've got the sum of visits, right, and I'm going to take data. Here I've got all my fields available in each data connection. I'm going to go to the Excel file and choose population. Whoops, I'm just going to divide it by population and times it by 1 million. Just because, right. Is that right? Oh, it's 10 million, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I've done here is write a simple calculation, but notice this calculation is coming from multiple data sources. You don't have to do pre-processing in order to get multiple data sources into one third data source, just so you can do some essentially basic analysis. So I'll click OK, and I've now further extended my data model in Google Analytics by adding this visits per million site. So now what I'll do is put that onto the color shelf. I'm going to change the way I encode these colors to give me a diverging palette so that things are a bit more obvious. I'm going to go orange to blue. Right, now I'm beginning to see some really interesting stuff. So what's going on here is blue represents, well, big squares represent lots of visits. Blue squares represent high visits per million, so high penetration within a territory. And red represents places where there's pretty much large populations, so the visits per million is pretty low. And we can begin to see some of these blues that are popping out now. Ireland has a blue square, has lots of penetration. I can quick filter and get rid of some of the ones that are a bit smaller. So what I'm going to do here is, let's just bring it over this side. Again, further explore this data by filtering out certain countries that have low visits per million, because I want to see where I've got lots of penetration. So as I drag this filter, what Tableau is doing is visually removing the ones with low penetration. When I let go, Tableau then redraws this view to show just those with a penetration over 324 per million. At this stage, it's like, okay, I know the US is really big. Let's just get rid of the US. And now I've got something pretty interesting because I've explored this data. I'm looking at just countries with pretty high penetration rates. You know, I've done that kind of arbitrarily. I've got rid of the US because I know that's a success. And I can see that, you know, Singapore, clearly our sales team in Asia are doing great work in Singapore because we've got loads of hits to our website, right? And so this is a kind of a visual exploration of the data that I've been able to do very, very quickly with data I'm getting from the cloud. I'll just reset that so it's all of them there. So we'll just call that visits per million. We've created 3 views. Currently, they're all separate, which is fine. But we can bring all of these together onto a dashboard. So what I'll do is I've just done a new dashboard. and you kind of get how it works. I drag and drop things onto my dashboard, and let's do visits per million down here. Actually, I don't like that. Oh, whoops. I'll put that on top of the map. Actually, I don't particularly like that either. Right, you know, and we can just keep playing with this till I get something I'm happy with. And actually, I'm going to do that as a line chart because it'll be a bit prettier. Right. You know, I'm changing the view very, very quickly just to find something that is pleasing to me and kind of gives me the results I want to see. So we've now got these views all in one place. And I can say, well, to continue that exploration, the visual analysis, I want to be able to click on the map because I understand geography and use that as a filter. So I'm going to say, click on the map, use this as a filter. And now when I lasso a bunch of countries in Asia, I get my visits per million in Asia in the tree map and the visits from those countries in the timeline. I could choose my EMEA countries and see the information. So within the countries I've selected at the bottom, UK, Israel, Ireland, Switzerland have high penetrations. The size legend here, well, this size legend only refers to the map, so I'm going to bring the size legend onto the map. The color is, well, in fact, I'll leave those there. But, you know, I'm going to put the size legend where it's appropriate. And I'll just call this Google Analytics Analysis. Show that title. And now talk about a little bit of a summary. So what we've got here is we've pulled data down from Google. Now, we could have done this from BigQuery, from wherever, you know, I don't know where your data is, but wherever it is, you've seen how we connect to these places. We've done analysis very, very quickly. We've added new dimensions and measures to the connection. So we've enhanced the connection in a way that it works with the way we think about data. You know, I can see what I want to select. I'm going to see that, grab it, and create new dimensions from it. We've taken that extra dimensionality and put it onto the other worksheets. And then we've brought data in from multiple connections. You know, you could have data on 10 different connections all on the same view here. And then finally, we brought it together into a dashboard that we can now, I could publish this to Tableau server. In fact, let's do that. I'm going to publish that to Tableau server. I'll explain what Tableau server is while this is going. Let's just publish the dashboard. Click yes to that. Everything we've been done so far is in Tableau desktop. So this is a desktop application put onto your PC. I've been doing the exploration cycle, the analysis, and at some stage you will hopefully want to share your insight with the rest of the organization. So one way you can do that is with Tableau server. And I'm going to go directly to the browser window here. So now I've switched to Chrome. But that single app action that I just did to publish this would mean that if I can access this Tableau server on my iPad, I would get this same experience. So now I'm in a browser and I get the same interactive experience that my data analyst gave me. I can select the countries in North America. Maybe it wasn't too visible, but now this is representing these countries I've selected. I'm in the browser with no add-ins here, and that would work just the same on an iPad. And this is a really key piece of the empowerment and integration aspect of integrating big data, is that you won't empower your end users until you make data and data visualization tools available wherever people are. And by making this stuff available in the browser, in mobile, you're really going to help people play with data wherever they are. And the final piece of that is like, well, so say my executive manager is using his iPad and he's showing this stuff to some chief executives or some customers, and he doesn't like this tree map. Well, so there he is, he's in a meeting and all he's got is an iPad where you can select the tree map and click edit. And now we're still in the browser, or I could still be on the iPad. And I can say, well, Andy, I don't like your tree maps. I'd rather see this as a bar chart. Fine, so we can show it as a bar chart. I don't like it as a side-by-side bar chart. fine. I'll do it as a bar chart, coloured by showing visits per million. And I haven't updated to my release version, so I do get these bugs occasionally. But you get the idea with in-browser editing to ask new questions of the data. You know, and if we're looking at this on an iPad, he would also see that. So I am going to stop there to just summarize. I've shown you the. Let's go back to PowerPoint. That's incorrect, isn't it? I've got evangelize twice. I think number one should be simplify, shouldn't it? Did anyone notice that? Oh. So simplify is about having a tool that gets you to the data quickly, whatever your data is. Coexist is about, well, look, we have multiple data types, let's bring them all together. Visualize, I hope you've really seen that, because that is ultimately the essence of Tableau. Empowerment is about giving everybody access to these tools wherever they are. Integration is the piece about bringing multiple data sets together as well. And I did a demo. And that's where I'm going to stop. So we've got plenty of time for questions. But I hope that's been useful. If you want to find out more, tablowsoftware.com. You can download the full functional product of Tableau Desktop and Tableau Server. It's a 14-day free trial, so you can try this out yourself, because I'm employed to make it look easy, but it's not until you point your data at it that you'll know whether that's true or not. So please go along to tablowsoftware.com, try it out for yourself, and there's lots of online training and resources and examples as well. So with that, I will hand it over to questions. Does anybody have any questions?